You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible.
I do want to talk to you about this here again. Nate Silver made this point in a number of tweets that Bloomberg is having issues in the polling. When you also look at what's going on, Joe Biden has to win South Carolina. And look, according to what I saw, several polls, he is down to Bernie Sanders anywhere from 6 to 9 points in North Carolina. He's actually leading in one poll. They're tied in Texas as well. And according to this one poll in Texas, they're saying that really Bloomberg is actually hurting Joe Biden against Sanders. So now the question is, after Super Tuesday, depending upon once we sort out, does Bloomberg drop out to help Biden beat Sanders? But if he stays in essence, he could be splitting the same number of voters who would normally be going for Joe Biden. You look at Elizabeth Warren. I mean, she's number 2 behind Bernie supporters, but he's number 1. Right. So one of the reasons she hasn't been able to gain traction is because of Bernie Sanders' presence in the race. So just again, just your thoughts on how this thing may very well shake out.
Well, for Joe Biden, South Carolina is incredibly critical. I've seen some polling today where he was up major, like massive, to the point where he was the only person who was even viable, meaning hitting over the 15
points.
Right.
Yeah, for the Cleveland University, their poll, they have Joe Biden at 38%, Tom Steyer at 17%, Bernie Sanders at 13%, and the other candidates are far back.
Right. And so if he can get a very decisive win, certainly with the help of Representative Jim Clyburn, that goes a long way for Joe Biden. Unfortunately, though, I think the problem that Joe Biden has is that the black support is a little bit more spread out outside of South Carolina, because Michael Bloomberg is picking up a good chunk of that, and Bernie Sanders is doing much better with the black vote outside of South Carolina. And Bernie Sanders, in some polls I've even seen, is actually leading by a very small margin, but leading in the black vote. And so I do think that Joe Biden is going to potentially have some issues, but if he can get some momentum out of South Carolina, that can change. I'm not of the mindset of saying, well, Michael Bloomberg is hurting Joe Biden or vice versa. I think that everybody has to win their race outright, and everybody's making their case. And if Michael Bloomberg's case is persuasive to people, that's not about hurting Joe Biden. That's about maybe Joe Biden didn't make his case well enough. He's certainly been in the race much longer than Michael Bloomberg. But I mean, yeah, if you just do the math, then Michael Bloomberg is certainly taking away margin from Joe Biden more so than Bernie Sanders. So I think that the Super Tuesday picture is all over the place. And I'm really curious to see who is even going to be viable outside of Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Michael Bloomberg, because it's in very few polls that I've seen have actually had anybody other than those 3 viable in most of the Super Tuesday states. And so I believe, from what I've heard or what Michael Bloomberg has telegraphed, that he would drop out after Super Tuesday if it doesn't look like he has a realistic path. But I think that the calculus changes a little bit if he's very close to Joe Biden. So at this point, I think the race is wide open between those 3. In particular, if Joe Biden can pull off a decisive win, then he certainly moves up a little bit more.
Look, Erica, bottom line is this simple. When you look at the number of candidates, frankly, you have people who are taking from one another. The field has to narrow. Otherwise, if you're Senator Bernie Sanders, you want everything to stay exactly as it is, because your solid 28, 30% does the same thing for him they did for Trump in 2016, and that is you win.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And he doesn't even have to compete, so to speak, at the same level that the other folks do. It was interesting because this morning, Bernie Sanders was at Wake Forest, was in Wake Forest, North Carolina, at an HBCU there. They split their time there, and then I believe came to South Carolina later on this evening. And so when I'm thinking about for these contests that will happen, not only for Super Tuesday, but looking at the 25 contests that will take place during our political March Madness, thinking about that some of the states that are in those 25 contests have the highest population of black folks. When I think about Virginia with 99 delegates, and thinking about North Carolina where Bernie Sanders' team was. When we think about those states and think about Georgia, I'm thinking about what do their on-the-ground operations look like for Bernie Sanders, for a Joe Biden, and for a Michael Bloomberg. And so you've said it, and you just said it again, that Bernie just only has to keep what's happening. If we don't either see Pete or Elizabeth Warren, but definitely Pete or Amy Klobuchar kind of drop out of the race, then things are definitely going to be a little bit more desperate for the Biden campaign, because what they would have to do in those states, particularly if he's talking about his relationship with African Americans, specifically in South Carolina. But when I'm thinking he'll continue to pass that message as he goes through these very African American, these states with large populations of African Americans. If he does not make any significant gains there, then it's really Bernie Sanders for the win.
All right, folks, we'll see what happens. Of course, South Carolina votes on Saturday.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, are you looking to enhance your leadership or that of your team in 2020? Well, you should join Dr. Jackie Hood Martin for her newest online course and mastermind group, How Successful People Think. She'll be your guide as you learn timeless leadership principles to apply to daily living. The offer expires on February 28th. That's this week. So register for or start the online course today. Go to www.livetolead.com/Leesburg. Live, L-I-V-E, the number 2, LEAD.com/Leesburg. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it.